And a short time ago, I spoke to the government's leader in the House, a Minister for Infrastructure and Transport, Anthony Albanese, who was in our Parliament House studio. Anthony Albanese, welcome to Lateline.
Good to be with you.
Well, the first week of Parliament for 2011, and against the backdrop of so many natural disasters, the bushfires in Perth, the floods, the cyclone in Queensland, the floods in Victoria. As Infrastructure Minister, I know it's early days, but what could this all end up costing the federal government?
Well, we know what the cost is at the moment of the package, and that's why we provided a full response to it. Of course, we have another event today with the Western Australian bushfires. Under the formula that's been established, of course, once there is a natural disaster declared, then the Commonwealth's contribution kicks in automatically. But, we've got a responsibility. We've got a responsibility to help, for example, in Queensland, to rebuild their roads, their bridges, their rail lines, their ports, and we will be providing that assistance, of course, as well on the north coast of New South Wales, in Victoria and in Western Australia.
And, of course, that package that you referred to, the $5.6 billion, that number only refers to the floods. It doesn't refer to the cyclone, it doesn't refer to the very latest flooding, and it doesn't refer to the bushfires. Is $5.6 billion starting to look rather inadequate?
Well, look, we know that last time with Cyclone Larry, I'm advised that the cost to the Commonwealth was in the order of $500 million. Of course, it's too early to put a final costing on what damage the cyclone has had in Queensland. And, of course, today, far too early to speculate about money. I think today is a day for remembering in Western Australia the damage that's been done.
That said, of course, Cabinet met today and you have started the hunt for more budget cuts. As you do that, what number are you working on? What sort of a target are you working on?
Well, look, we have our budget process, Ali, and we'll work that through. We worked through a process to establish the $5.6 billion with, I think, a very responsible package, a package that combined the $1.8 billion that'll be raised by the flood levy, applied in a very progressive way so that those people who earn under $50,000 a year won't pay anything at all, and up to $100,000 a year it will be only $5 a week. So in terms of that contribution, and then a series of deferrals, we made sure, for example, in the infrastructure package that we put together, that we maintained our support for all the projects which were already contracted and are being rolled out, because we understood how important they are for productivity.
That's the package that you've announced so far, of course. What I'm asking you is, as you search for budget cuts, which you and the Prime Minister have said you've already started to do, what do you work on? Do you work on another $1 billion, another $2 billion, another $5 billion? You must have some working, vague, early day estimate above the 5.6 you've already identified.
Well, Ali, as you'd expect, I'm not on your program tonight in February to make our budget announcements, which will be worked through the process. We'll work them through. We're determined to return the budget to surplus in 2012-13. That's an absolute commitment that we have. We think we've got a very responsible package in response to the disasters which have occurred. We've got to remember the human dimension of this, the difficulties we might have in terms of finding room in the budget are nothing compared with the real issue, which is that people have had, not only we've had lives lost, but many more have had their lives destroyed.
So can I clarify then that while we heard about the $5.6 billion package, there won't be any other formal announcement of how much the federal government is going to have to pay until the budget? Any further financial update will come with the budget?
No, there won't be an announcement on your program tonight.
But there will be one before the budget?
Well, that's a matter for the Prime Minister and the Treasurer, with due respect. And we'll be making, though, our costings are fully known, as we have with this. I mean, I've worked through now with the state governments where we have deferrals, have all been accepted. that we've put forward, a total of 10 projects, in order to create that billion-dollar space which enables the labour and the capital to be used in rebuilding Queensland's roads and bridges and rail lines.
So have you found that
that's
billion?
Been worked through.
Have you found that billion? Because you've publicly announced, I think, around 400 million of it. You found the other 600?
Yes, we have, and that's all been worked through with the states.
And where is that? Is that in Victoria?
There are 6 projects in Queensland. There's one project in New South Wales, the Northern Sydney Freight Line, which will be deferred $100 million of that project, and then 2 deferrals in Victoria, $500 million for the regional rail link and $20 million for the Princes Highway East. Now, those positions have all been accepted by the states. There is an understanding there that we need to rebuild Queensland, that we need to rebuild Victoria, and indeed respond in Western Australia now, as well as the north coast of New South Wales.
Are welfare cuts on the table?
Look, those budget deliberations will take place, and I'm not here tonight, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to speculate and rule things in or out, and you wouldn't expect me to, with due respect, Ali. But we will make sure that we can provide the funding there consistent with returning the budget to surplus in 2012-13.
So how do you respond to Doug Cameron, for example, who says that welfare reform has to be a long-term approach? It's not about short-term budget cuts.
Well, I was in the caucus today, and that's actually not what Doug Cameron said in the caucus. But in terms of...
Did he talk in caucus about welfare cuts?
No, not at all. He talked about the importance of work, as well as welfare being provided for those people who couldn't work. So it was a constructive discussion in the caucus. The caucus is very united. Our caucus is moving forward, prepared to take the decisions to ensure that Queensland can be rebuilt, while Tony Abbott and the opposition just snipe at the sidelines, just oppose. I note today Joe Hockey did what Tony Abbott has failed to do day after day, which is to admit that the email which went out soliciting donations for the Liberal Party under the guise of opposing the flood levy was inappropriate and unacceptable, and it shouldn't have happened.
Well, let's get back to your spending. And in terms of overseeing the spending of federal funds, you've announced today a reconstruction inspectorate which will oversee the federal expenditure by the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. That inspectorate is going to answer to a Natural Disaster Recovery Cabinet subcommittee. On top of that, you're setting up a Commonwealth Natural Disaster Recovery Task Force. Why so much bureaucracy?
Well, we want to make sure in terms of the spending with the inspectorate. We've appointed 3 people, John Fahey, Martin Albrecht from TEAS and Matt Sheeran from Deloitte, to make sure that the spending is overseen by people with experience, to make sure that the value for every dollar spent is achieved.
But what does it say about a Labor government that you need a former federal Liberal minister to oversee your expenditure?
No, that's not right at all.
Well, John Fahey is a former Liberal cabinet minister.
What it says is that this is a government that's prepared to put aside partisan politics and appoint people of talent and ability. John Fahey, as someone who's a former New South Wales Premier, as well as a former federal finance minister, has a good understanding of both state finances as well as federal finances and the way that budgets work. He's an appropriate person, as well as Mr Albrecht, who has experience as a former managing person in TEAS in terms of a major construction company, and Deloitte's, of course, a major corporation as well.
Tony Abbott says you shouldn't need a second bureaucracy to make sure the first one is spending money wisely. It does seem like a lot of layers.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I mean, Tony Abbott should be embarrassed, frankly, by the position that he's taken on all of these issues. When it comes to Tony Abbott, instead of giving people a hand up, he's put his hand out for donations to the Liberal Party. And I think, frankly, he should be ashamed of his effort over recent days.
With so many natural disasters, doesn't it strengthen the argument for a permanent National Disaster Recovery Fund?
Look, we've got to deal with the here and now, Ali, and we have had a real crisis. I mean, already. We have a situation in terms of infrastructure damage. We now have in Queensland all airports open throughout Queensland. An amazing achievement. All ports up and running. The Bruce Highway, with some restrictions on it in terms of speed and activity on the Bruce Highway, but it's open all the way from Brisbane to Cairns. That's an extraordinary effort. That's been our priority, Ali, dealing with the real concerns that are immediate, and we've made sure that we're doing that. As for the medium and long term, there's an appropriate time and place for that discussion, but we wanted to respond to the immediate crisis that Queenslanders in particular have faced.
If I can move on to another issue, your climate advisor, your key climate advisor, Ross Garnaut, said today that for the last 10 years, Australia has been a significant drag on international efforts on climate change. Is he right?
Well, if you have a look back, I think, Ali, when we were elected to government, we signed the Kyoto Protocol, or ratified it, as our first action way back in December, and then we attended the Bali conference. We've contributed to the international debate. This government put forward its carbon pollution reduction scheme, argued for it, put it to the vote not once but twice, had the debate in the House of Representatives and the Senate. It was blocked by the Coalition and the Greens in the Senate, so we weren't able to achieve that. But we have, of course, also legislated for a 20% renewable energy target by 2020.
So we are running out of time, Minister. So in essence, you're saying he's wrong.
Well, I don't think it's a reasonable comment. I think that Australia, certainly under this government, has taken climate change seriously. We're determined to act on it, and that contrasts with the inaction and denial of the Howard government, who pretended that it didn't exist.
That said, he's your key climate advisor.
Well, he's entitled to his opinion, Ali, but the fact is that the Howard government was frozen in time while the world warmed around it. We haven't had that position. We turned it around on day one, the day that we were sworn in at Government House, and we've continued to be determined to take action on climate change.
Well, of course, climate change is just one of the many issues you're going to have to deal with this year. Is 2011 make or break for the Prime Minister, her one chance to really put her stamp on the position?
Look, 2011 will be a year of decisiveness and delivery for the Gillard government.
And for Julia Gillard?
Julia has a big agenda. She has the united support of the Labor team, and we're determined to take action this year, making sure on issues such as putting a price on carbon, but also addressing major challenges in health reform, in driving through change such as the skills agenda, addressing the two-paced economy. All of those issues we intend to address, all while maintaining our responsible economic position that returns the budget to surplus in 2012-13.
And no rumbling about the Prime Minister's position?
Oh, come on, Ali. The Prime Minister has just been re-elected as the Prime Minister in August last year. We've got 2.5 years to run. We've got a big agenda. Labor governments always have a big vision. We've certainly got one led by the Prime Minister.
And, of course, just being re-elected, just would be the operative word.
Well, we sit on the government benches, Ali, and that means you're in a position to actually affect change that has an impact in improving the lives of everyday Australians. That's our objective. Every morning we wake up with that in mind, and we go to bed probably a bit later than we'd like to at night, having done our best for the nation.
Minister, thank you very much for talking to Lateline ahead of such a busy week in Canberra.
Thanks, Ali.